Hi there, Dr. Tanya Crabb, licensed clinical psychologist and CAPS counselor, here for your mental health moment. In the last mental health moment, we sort of explored the idea of therapy. What is it? How do I know the difference between a therapist and a counselor? And just the idea of whether or not someone should seek therapy and under what circumstances they should consider seeing a therapist. If you have questions about that, please feel free to consult the other video. For this particular session, we're going to talk about choosing a therapist. So let's say that now you're ready to make that move. Now you've decided, therapy might not be such a bad idea for me. How do I find the right fit? How do I find the right therapist for me? So there are questions that, I say to myself that I would ask when choosing a therapist. So I like to share them with you. Question number one, do they possess a current license and are they appropriately trained and or credentialed for dealing with whatever it is that I am dealing with? This is super important. The fancy titles and names are fantastic and wonderful, but training and licensure is extremely important. For example, if you were to go to a doctor to seek care for your physical condition, you would want to know that that doctor is trained in being able to deal with whatever it is that you're seeking care for. You would want to know, for example, are they board certified in whatever it is that they're seeking care for? You'd want to know that they've received adequate preparation to deal with whatever it is that your issue is coming in with. Now, that's not to say that you necessarily would need one that specializes, but they should at least know medicine if you're going to see them. Same deal with a therapist or a counselor. They should have received the appropriate educational training. They should have had some opportunities to practice the skill sets that they're in. And they should, in most situations, be licensed to practice where they're practicing. Having a license says that not only have they gone through the rigors of being able to perform this task, but they're also accountable to someone in terms of how they do their jobs. So there are some exceptions. Some institutions, some programs, some trainings, the people that provide mental health care might be, for example, an intern. So the thing about an intern is a person who's received the appropriate training that is working towards their licensure. And there is a system of accountability built in for them because they actually have to get supervision from someone who is licensed in that field. And what that means is that they fall under that person's license. Nobody wants someone under their license that's gonna mess up their license. So that's something to know. So there will be some cases, some rare exceptions, where you will see someone who is not fully licensed but still has the appropriate educational training. The other thing that I look for is, do they have experience and knowledge dealing with my particular issue? This is super important if there's a particular area of your life that you need help and resolution with. Does this person know how to manage trauma? Does this person know what to do with an eating disorder? Does this person have experience dealing with the things that I am personally dealing with right now? That's not to say that they have had to have gone through the things that I'm personally dealing right now, but did they receive training on how to manage the issues that I'm struggling with? Third thing that I consider is, does the therapist make me feel heard and understood? That is super duper duper important. You know, Therapy in and of itself can be, at least in the very beginning stages, a slightly uncomfortable process, and we'll discuss that later. But the hope is that over time, when working with your therapist, you can feel like they're able to meet your needs, that they're able to see you, understand you, and be able to help you the best way possible. So the other thing that I ask is, does the therapist provide me with the tools that I can use to continue my emotional and healing growth outside of the office? That's a super important thing to know, because at the end of the day, the goal of therapy is to not have to keep going to therapy. That's not to say that the therapy process might not take a certain amount of time, or may be a certain amount of time in the session before you're able to get to a point where you feel that you're able to stand on your own. But the idea is to eventually stand on your own. The idea is to get the tools, emotional insights, or learnings to help you so that you're not needing to be in therapy for the rest of your life. In some cases, you may need to touch bases with a therapist for an ongoing concern that requires monitoring. But at the end of the day, you should still be able to have some level of functioning once you leave the therapist's office. So if you answered yes to all four, then yay, you might have found yourself a person who could be considered for your therapist. While we're exploring what to look for, let's talk about what's not okay in therapy. So some therapist warning signs. Big red flag warning sign number 1. The therapist behaves sexually towards me or tries to initiate a sexual relationship with me. Sex and abuse are not part of therapy. If any of those things show up, if your therapist is trying to date you, go out with you, hook up with you, that's not okay. That's abuse, and that is actually reportable to that governing body that I talked about. Another warning sign, your therapist berates, belittles, or humiliates you. That's not what therapy is about. Therapy is not where you go to feel worse about yourself than before you arrived. A therapist threatens or harasses me, whether in session, electronically, or outside the session. Therapist tries to exploit the relationship, and not just sexual exploitation. That is, the therapist wants a favor. Can you run an errand for me? Can you buy me something? Oh, I see that you work at this particular location. Can I get a hookup? Those things are not supposed to happen in the context of therapy. A therapist asks you to perform personal services. I was wondering, I see that you're a babysitter. Can you watch my child? Can you walk my dog? Do you mind picking up my dry cleaning for me? Or generally act as an errand boy. Therapy should be safe and appropriate. If any of these things are showing up, that is not therapy, and that is reportable, and that is not okay. So I hope that helped clarify some of the questions about what to look for in a therapist. I would be excited to hear if anyone else has any considerations or thoughts around it. So thank you for tuning in for another mental health moment. I'll check you later.